Well, hello there all you marvelous people, and welcome back to another episode of An Ecologist Plays, the channel where we are learning more about nature by playing games. We are back in Ark Survival Evolved. My name is Will, and we're just watching the T-Rexes over there apparently trying to hammer a poor Diplodocus, and it just kind of whacking them away the whole time. Well, that's an interesting start to the episode. Anyway, we are heading off to the colder regions. So we on Flamecrest, our Argentavis over here, our most trusty of steeds. And we are just going to be heading into the cold regions of the map. And in order to do that, I have dressed myself in the warmest clothes I could find. I obviously still have my safari hat on the... Oh, hello. Why are the Titanomyrma over here? Come on. Titanomyrma meaning Titan ants. And they were from Germany as far as I recall. Ancient species of ant, not quite as big as they are shown in here. And we are battling to get rid of them. Got rid of one. But anyway, we are being chased. Last episode, we were chased by a massive creature, the Rhinognatha. Today, we are chased by Titanomyrma. So you can see here, massive in size compared to us. And we're not going to climb off because there are T-Rexes and everything in the area. But Titanomyrma here, as I've mentioned, as far as I recall, they come from Germany. They were from probably, I think, and I'll have it down below, but I think they were from the Messel pits as well, where a whole bunch of relatively recent creatures were found. Now, what is weird is that most of the big creatures that we have seen, the massive Meganeura, for example, the dragonflies in the game, Arthropleura, which are the giant millipedes that are also in the game, those all lived during the Carboniferous period, the period in the Earth's history when insects really got massive in size. The Titanomyrma, however, was far more recent. And with Titanomyrma, there were 3 species, 2 of them found in Germany and 1 from the US. We are now in the cold regions, and of course that means we're going to be looking at things like Culodonta, the woolly rhino. In the game here, the woolly rhino has got that massive horn in the front and then a smaller horn in the back, which is accurate. However, the closest living relatives of Culodonta, or the woolly rhino, is in fact the single-horned rhinos. And the Sumatran rhino is the closest living relative of that species. And we have got a T-Rex over there, so we must just keep an eye on our stamina and make sure we do not accidentally drop down to the ground. Yes, my old Flamecrest is also screaming because, oh my word, this is a dangerous place to be. Anyway, so, woolly rhino, let's quickly catch up to it again before it is attacked by the T-Rex, which it most surely will be. So typical rhinos, very, very poor eyesight, would have survived in the, what we call the mammoth steppes, which were the large grassland areas that were present over most of Eurasia, so Europe and Asia, at the time of the last glacial maximum, or the point in the Earth's history when most recently there were massive glaciers present in the northern half of the world. Very small ears, which is very characteristic of the woolly rhino. That is an adaptation. No dire wolves, no. Okay, that's the problem. Oh, and there's a T-Rex, of course, attacking the woolly rhino. So, I don't think the rhino is... Oh, there's a dire wolf also attacking it. Yeah, no, that woolly rhino unfortunately did not make it. Right. Yeah, now it is, of course, a very, very dangerous area to be in. T-Rex, I'm going to take you out. You do not belong in the cold. No. No, no, no. There. Right, so that went. Anyway, as I was trying to say, with... Oh, and there's the other T-Rex wandering around in the background there. Anyway, as I was trying to say, with the woolly rhino, that's those small ears, very important for a creature living in cold regions. So, all the creatures we're looking at today will have special adaptations that allow them to survive in these environments. Small ears means that you don't lose as much heat from your ears. If you have large ears, you are going to lose a lot of heat and you're going to freeze to death, whereas small ears are better at retaining heat or not losing heat as quickly. So the woolly rhino had smaller ears than your typical savanna rhinos would have. Oh, and here we have a whole pack of creatures, and I think I know what I'm seeing there. Yeah, that is Eutyrannus, the feathered tyrant, somewhere. That is what its name also means. Eutyrannus, discovered from China, was the largest known feathered tyrannosaurid. So Tyrannosaurus itself, most likely as adults at least, did not have feathers, whereas Eutyrannus, which we can see there attacking Smilodons, they did have feathers. And there were 3 very good specimens discovered of Eutyrannus. All 3 of them had feathers in different parts of their body. So it is quite possible that the majority of Eutyrannus's body was actually covered with feathers. Now, previously, before Eutyrannus was discovered, there was another Chinese dinosaur, Dailong, which means the emperor dragon, and it was semi-feathered, but it had what we call proto-feathers. Proto-feathers not having that typical central shaft of the feathers of birds that you see nowadays. Whereas Eutyrannus, it seems here, had more typical feathers. So, with the fact that 3 specimens were discovered with 3 different life stages actually as well. So there's a young one, a slightly older one, and an adult one. That was a very good indication of how they change as they got older. Anyway, it had these feathers, and most likely a good adaptation for surviving in very, very cold regions. Similar to Nanuqsaurus, which was a similar type of dinosaur found in Alaska, but there's no evidence with Nanuqsaurus that it actually had feathers, but because it occurred in the polar regions, it is quite possible that they also had some kind of feathery covering. And the reason is that feathers and fur are very good at trapping heat and maintaining body temperatures. So birds, for example, really very good at maintaining their body temperature, and here we're just watching the Eutyrannus and its subordinates decimating a woolly mammoth. As I was saying, feathers really good at trapping heat. That along with blubber, 2 of the best adaptations you can have for survival in very, very cold regions. And so the Eutyrannus had feathers. Nanuqsaurus probably would have had feathers as well. And then a lot of the species that, like Tyrannosaurus, which were away from the cold regions, would not have had feathers because they and we are being attacked by a colleague. Stop attacking us, colleague. Of course, the Argentavis, very territorial as these types of birds would have been, and we'll get back to that in a moment. As I was saying, the Tyrannosaurus itself was a massive-bodied creature, and it, as I've mentioned, did not occur in the polar regions. It was more in the temperate and tropical regions. If it had feathers, it would most likely have overheated, and that is a problem with the feathery covering of things like Therizinosaurus, which was big-bodied, would not occur in the polar regions, and most likely would actually have overheated if it were completely covered by feathers. So, anyway, we had some giant ground sloths there at the back there, but this is what I wanted to have a look at. Megaloceros, the Irish elk, or the giant elk. Really an amazing creature. I mean, look at those horns there. They were round about the size of a moose that we have nowadays, but with bigger horns. Truly, truly impressive. And as I've mentioned last time, it was a combination of a change in climate and hunting by humans that eventually resulted in their extinction. The forested areas were not the best habitat for them. They were not the best food available for them, especially for females. Females could go into the forests, no problems, even denser forests. The males struggled to go into the denser forests, but then the females could have gone in, but there was not enough high quality food for them. So as more and more forests started appearing in the Mammoth Steppes and across Eurasia actually, the habitat, or the preferred habitat of them, tended to go away. And the similar thing happened with the woolly rhino, which unfortunately we don't have here at the moment. But the woolly rhino also suffered as a result of the expansion of the boreal forests, or of the forests in the northern hemisphere. If we can just turn around, we can have a good look at the sexual dimorphism though. We have a female right down there. So there's the female Megaloceros. Also, you can see in the game here at least, very small ears. Also good at reducing heat loss, and there's the male Megaloceros, of course. Now, we do know more or less what the coloration was of these guys, with cave paintings that indicated at least they had some darker patches along the front of their body and then lighter in the back. Could have been a form of camouflage. Being lighter in the back would mean that you could, if you're standing and looking in that direction and a predator comes up from behind where you can't spot it, at least it won't be seeing you as easily, because with your lighter rump you tend to then blend in with the background. Anyway, as I was trying to say, woolly rhinos, as the boreal forests expanded and wetlands started spreading across the northern hemisphere in the habitats that they were in, they also were kind of pushed out of their prime habitats and they eventually went extinct. And a similar thing also happened with probably the most magnificent mammal in this game, the woolly mammoth. Now in this game it's got weird tusks that are split, which is not accurate. Anyway, massive woolly elephants, so woolly mammoths. And they were probably the species of all the species we have, all the extinct species we have in the game, except for the dodo. The mammoth here was probably the species that was still around most recently. They were around at the time when Egypt was forming its civilization, and by the time it was building its pyramids, about 4,400 years ago, the last mammoths went extinct. Some populations held on longer than others. The mainland ones went extinct first, and then there were some populations in isolated areas and really in the islands that survived for a longer period of time than their mainland counterparts. What have we got here? Oh, I know what we have. A Daeodon. Oh my word. A whole pack. Now these are Daeodon, meaning terrible teeth or hostile teeth. And you can, that, just looking at that mouth there, you can understand why it was given that name. And it is a group, or it is part of the Intelodont group, which were also very affectionately called hell pigs. Even though they were not true pigs, they're not closely related to pigs, they do give a kind of a piggish or they do have a piggish appearance, at least. Now, they may have occurred in little loose groups like this, but they would not have occurred in an icy environment. Instead, these Intelodonts, these Daeodons, are known from a floodplain habitat, what is now the agate fossil beds in North America. And this one is trying to get to us, but it can't. We are too high for you, little one. Right, anyway. So, that guy there. So, there is a documentary that is hopefully being made on agate, the Forgotten Bloodlines agate, I believe, is the documentary that includes the Daeodon and also includes things like some Calicotheres, I believe, and basically life at the end of the Oligocene, start of the Miocene period when these guys were alive. They were alive up to about 20 million years ago. So, very pig-like, but not true pigs. Instead, they were a group all on their own, and they were ferocious predators. And you can see with teeth like that, I mean, that is, yes, they would have been omnivorous as well, most likely, but they definitely would have been able to hunt and kill and crush the bones of their prey as well. Very, very strong jaws. Right, so we are not going to be messing with him. Instead, we are going to be moving on. And we have the dire wolves as another typical Arctic hunter along here. And there is one, larger than your typical wolf that you normally see. We'll get back to them, I believe, in the next episode again as well. But really, really gorgeous. And quite possibly also a pack hunter, as with modern wolves. Dogs overall do lend themselves to being a little bit more social and occurring in more tight-knit groups than cats. If you're looking at cats, very few of them are actually social, with the exception of lions, of course, and potentially certain species like Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat. Most cats are not very social at all, instead very territorial, and will attack any other individuals coming into their territories. Let's see, we've got the Calicotheres here again. And we've got Megaloceros as well. Argentavis flying all over the place. Argentavis also would not have occurred in an icy environment like this. Instead, they would have occurred in mountainous areas, yes, but also more on grassland or in grassland environments. So some of the animals that we do have here really would not have done very well in this type of habitat. And of course, our Argentavis over there is doing what it would have possibly done to get food, knocking things off cliffs. Similar to behavior we observe in golden eagles, for example, which will be hunting along cliff faces in mountainous areas, picking up goats and dropping them to their deaths. So that's one way of hunting, of course. If you can't actively grip and kill the prey, may as well let gravity do the work. Now, one last thing there. We have a megalodon swimming over there, and the water over here is most likely frigidly cold, as we are also dehydrated. Let's just quickly drink some water down here before we die. And then let's quickly head back here, because I wanted to talk about megalodon. Well, there we go. So the water over here would be freezing. Really, really cold. So how on earth is a cold-blooded organism like megalodon able to survive here? The thing is that great white sharks, if you look at those, they are semi-warm blooded. So one adaptation they have is what we call a rete mirabile, which means wonderful net in Latin. And that is a network of capillaries, veins and arteries and capillaries and a whole bunch of blood vessels, where blood that has been warmed by the muscles as it is swimming, so the blood then heats up a little bit, that is flowing in a counter-current system with cold blood. And in the process, it transfers some of the heat. So as long as the shark is actually swimming and the muscles are working, that blood heats up. And then that blood will heat up the colder blood flowing around in that rete mirabile, or flowing in the opposite direction. And it's a very effective way of transferring heat into those vessels. And by doing that, these creatures, the great white sharks, and then most likely things like megalodon as well, are able to be semi-warm-blooded and actually maintain their body temperature at a higher temperature than the surrounding water. So they are able to survive in quite cold water. There are some other species that will also use this type of adaptation, but one of the most well-studied ones would be with the great white shark. And it's quite possible that the similar megalodon here could also have survived in colder waters by doing that, by having a rete mirabile. Of course, arteries like that don't fossilize. Right. So that was a bit of a brief look at some of the creatures we have encountered or can encounter in the colder regions of this island. We are next time going to go on along the coastline here, and we're going to talk about the other creatures we encounter, the mammoths at the back there. There's some more direwolves we'll be talking about as well, and we'll look a little bit more at things like Daeodon and all those types of marvelous creatures. And at Sid the Sloth, which is right over there. Of course, the Megatherium. So if you enjoyed the episode, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't yet. Also remember that on Friday there will be another episode of Grounded with Nick and I also putting up a video, and then on Saturday Nick and I of course will be streaming Dinkum. So until next time everybody, stay safe and we will see you all soon. Bye!